All right. Hey, everybody.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Going well. How are you?
Good. Doing great. Welcome to another Bloom show. We are so excited to have several new faces here with us today. And so I wanted to first introduce our first new face, which is Gina, who is the newest member of the ICPro team. And Gina, would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Gina. I was an intern for Internal Comms Pro, but recently I came on full-time as the digital marketing coordinator. I'm also the associate producer for our Internal Comms Pro, the podcast, and I am transitioning now to a producer for the Bloom series. Today, mostly, I will just be keeping an eye on any questions you guys might have during this webinar. And as someone who's new to the internal comms world, I'm just excited to be here and learn something new.
Oh, and I'm so happy to have another team member so we can do more amazing, wonderful things. And I'm so glad we have somebody to keep looking at the chat so that, because I get so involved in what our guests are saying, it's hard to manage both of that. So I also want to thank our sponsor. As you know, Circle has been the sponsor of this series. They've got a great new product out called Broadcast that I am so geeked out about, where you can finally publish something and it can go immediately to all the channels of where your employees are engaging. It's all personalized. I could go on and on about that, but my co-host, who I love, who works there, Corrine Stallings, is here. Corrine, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here.
So Corrine's got a ton of experience in internal comms, and I'm always pulling on her whenever I get questions that I don't, know things about. So I'm glad that she's always my sidekick, ready to bail me out. So I'm happy to be here. Also, I wanted to mention this before we get started. I know there's been this talk of breakout rooms. I totally screwed up last week or 2 weeks ago. I'm learning Zoom a ton, and we got feedback from people even after the show saying, oh my gosh, we really like this webinar format. It's been promoted this way. We kind of eat our lunch when you do this show. We don't really want to have to get all gussied up and engage quite in that way. We would like to, but it may be in a different time. So we're going to keep our structure of how we're going to do this, where we're going to have our guests. Of course, you can engage with questions. And then we are going to try a breakout room type series that we'll talk about at the end of this show, and that we'll get feedback, from the group. But for today, it will be the same format that you're used to. So no worries here from the group. But I want to hop right in, and I want to get to our guest because I know we've only got 30 minutes together. We have Joe with us, who is the Director of Employee Communications for Arizona Public Service. Joe, I can't thank you enough for being here. I am going to stop sharing my screen just at this point so that we can get a better view of kind of the four of us. But Joe, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Sure. Hey, Sarah. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. So, backstory, I've been in communications, public relations for a while, 20-something years. Started off more on the PR side. I used to work at General Motors, grew up in Michigan, so worked for a car company there, and eventually made my way to Arizona. Since I've been in Arizona, which has been about 20 years now, primarily my work has been on the employee communication side. So it's something I kind of fell into after doing some PR work, and just love this side of the house, and have enjoyed being part of it for that period of time.
Well, we're glad that you're here. We got introduced to you through your team member, Zane. And he had nominated you to be on the show. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later in the show about your team. We've got some questions around that too. But I'm just was so glad to be connected with you. And I know Corrine and I had hopped on, a prep call for the show. So out of that call kind of came three sort of buckets of information that we're going to talk about today. And I know Corrine, you're going to start us off with the first one.
Sure. So I know, Joe, you have your fair share of crises working for a public utility. Can you share kind of how that experience helped you through COVID-19 planning and execution?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been at Arizona Public Service for 8 years now and seen a lot of drama, a lot of activity. We're a highly regulated company, and some of the challenges we've had has come through that part of the business, but also on the operations side in other areas. So I quickly learned, me and my team, how to respond quickly to situations we had not planned on, and how to put together communication plans and execute tactics quickly on the fly at times. Not that we don't have plans and are prepared. It's just the pace of those changes that have happened on top of an already busy schedule that my team maintains. We really learned over the years through that experience how to adapt, and also how to lean very heavily on our partnerships with other departments, including media relations, customer communications, regulatory teams, operations teams. So true partnership and working through those challenges. So when COVID came up, and our company began to realize that we needed to quickly put in some protocols, including sending employees to work from home, and put in other safety precautions where we have employees that can't work from home. They're running power plants and out fixing lines and poles, how to make sure they stay safe and keep socially distant and that type of thing. So I went into what was supposed to be a 3-hour meeting on a Thursday that turned into a 2-day session with a variety of people from across the company, as we realized that we needed to move quicker than we had anticipated going into the 3-hour meeting. So in this, what we call a war room, I guess, we sat down and we had, facilities folks, IT, operations, safety, health, HR, and we figured out, we weren't just there to talk about communications. We were there to figure out, what are we going to do as a company? What protocols are we going to put in place? And it was incredible experience to be in that room. And I didn't just have a communications hat on. I was in there to help with those decisions, what the best course for the company was, help put those recommendations together. And then once we knew we were going to execute, to then quickly go into communication mode. So, and I had a lot of help along the way. Obviously, it wasn't just me doing that work, but we were prepared for that experience. Our channels are in place, our how we message, how we coordinate with other groups were in place from those previous experiences. So it was just a little bit quicker than usual, because we did it all in about 2 days, and but the result was pretty phenomenal.
That's great. So you talked about kind of credibility. How, I guess, over your tenure with Arizona Public Utility, how have you really kind of developed and cultivated that credibility across the organization?
Yeah, I think to gain credibility, you do it in a couple different ways. One, you have to get out and meet people, network, build relationships with people across the organization, starting, I think, at the executive level. And then you have to produce results and do what you say you're going to do. And that's something I've always emphasized with my people, is that, we will be focused on customer service, internal customer service, and delivering on what we promise folks. And we will also be part of those decisions. We are not going to sit back and wait for work to come to us or take orders. We are going to be in the room and provide consultation, strategic direction, guidance, and then help execute on those decisions. And so I think over time, as you build those relationships and you demonstrate your abilities, your credibility grows, and then you are typically involved not just in the end of part of the process, but in the early parts where you're discussing decisions, making decisions, and then communicating those decisions. And so, I'm fortunate that I have folks on my team that completely have mastered that skill and have gained their own credibility over the years. And together as a collective unit, I feel we're highly respected, highly counted on, and a highly reliable group that our leadership turns to when they need us.
So
Great.
we were talking about this, I know, on our prep call, and it was something that we talked about on the last show with Carolyn Clark from GoDaddy. She had mentioned this idea, and this is always talked about in the groups of like now they've always wanted a seat at the table, and now they've got a seat at the table, and they don't want to lose that seat. And so they say yes to everything. They're taking on everything. And there's this learning moment of, yeah, I am on the team, but how to filter through some of that. And I know when we talked on our call, you had already had a seat at that table. And so you were like the first person that they called. And so we kept talking about that, and how you were able to, you were a person of one when you came in, and now you do have this team. So, and I know I do this to our guests and I push a little harder, but what were some practical, maybe tactical things that you could share with our audience on how all along before the years came, while you were building that team, how did you show value? Like, can we dive a little bit deeper into, okay, we said we were going to do, but were you strategic about okay, this is what we're going to do first. And then we're going to develop our relationship with that department. And then can you dive in just a little bit deeper in some maybe exact things that you did to show that value that folks in our audience could do themselves if they're trying to build their team?
Yeah, absolutely. And I listened in on the discussion with Carolyn and found that interesting and helpful as well. And when I came into APS, I wasn't alone. We did have some resources in place, and there was some centralizing that I helped put together. And then we've grown it since then. And, at other companies, the seat at the table has never really been a big challenge for me. I don't know why that is, but I think it's something that, when I've gone to conferences and people have raised that as a roadblock, I just haven't found that. And I think, again, it comes down to building those relationships. The first thing I do when I join a company is I set up one-on-ones with every executive in the company. And so I can get to know them personally and share my background and my philosophy on communications, find out what challenges they're having, and then start to suggest ways we can support those issues they're having through communications. So I think that's kind of where you set the standard. And then just getting involved in projects where you're sitting at the table with folks who are helping drive those projects and showing the value you can lend, even beyond communications. There's something Carolyn said 2 weeks ago, I didn't completely agree with, and that she said when you get the seat at the table, there's times you're going to be asked questions about other parts of the organization, and you have to say, I'm kind of here for the communications piece. It was something along those lines, and I didn't really agree with that. If your goal is to be just a leader of communications, then that's the right approach. If you want to be a leader in the organization, I think you contribute to those conversations, even if they're not communications related. Going back to the COVID experience, I was fortunate to be involved in discussions, and I am now on reintegration into the workplace on how that looks, how we should proceed, what protocols we put in place. I wasn't just listening to the conversation, trying to capture what I needed to communicate. I was actually contributing to my opinion on how we should approach those things. And as were the other folks in the room. They weren't just siloed in their area of expertise. They were contributing ideas and suggestions to how we should do these things. And so I think when you get a seat at the table, don't be afraid to voice your opinion on a direction or a decision the company is making, and make sure you're reflecting the employee audience. And so that employee audience better than anyone in that room. And so you understand how the decisions that they're discussing will impact them. And so you voice your opinion early to help drive or change that decision. Makes it a lot easier for you to communicate, but it also shows that, hey, I'm here more than just the communications guy. I'm not here to wait till you finish and you tell me what to communicate. I'm here to actually help drive change in the company, drive decisions, and then be part of delivering that information to employees. So getting back to your question, it's building those relationships, and then it's demonstrating your capabilities, being strategic, being proactive, and not being afraid to take some chances. I'll give you an example. When I joined APS, I was early in my time there, I was at an all executive meeting, and they were discussing a topic. I was there to report out on something. And our chief operating officer at the time was a guy that intimidated some folks and commanded the room. And I had interviewed with him, and I thought hit it off with him. So at some point, my old boss likes to share this story. At some point, he made a comment or joke towards me, and I kind of fired a response back at him, and the whole room kind of froze and looked at him and waiting for his reaction because they weren't used to someone doing that. And he just kind of started laughing, and it kind of set the room at ease. And that's kind of set the tone for that's how I approach things. I'm going to share what I think. I'm going to respond, sometimes sarcastically, and sometimes that gains respect. Doesn't work with everybody, but it's worked well for my career. And so again, it's making those relationships, proving what you can do, not being afraid to take chances, and demonstrate that you're more than just there to consult on communications.
I love that first practical tip, because to set that standard and meet with all of the leaders. I love that. And I'm watching our time. I know we're about halfway through, and I want to get to Zane. So we have such a wide variety of people that are in our audience. We have folks that are, one woman, one man band type teams, which is why we ask these questions so many different ways. We have young rising professionals that are on a team. We have senior leaders. So Zane, reaches out and says, oh, you got to have Joe on the show, right? And then we talk to you, and then you gloat all over Zane, like he's a go-getter, he's a this, he's a that. So can you dive into when you are, and I want to give sort of the rising, young professionals kind of the answers to the test. What about Zane makes him a valuable member of your team? When you are looking to grow your team, tell us how you spot that talent. Let's dive into that a bit.
Yeah, so Zane's an amazing person and communicator, and we were very fortunate to get him on the team about 6 or 7 years ago. And I have other people on my team that have similar stories. We've been very fortunate. Sometimes you just get lucky, Zane came in pretty quiet guy, had a little bit of experience in communications, but me and his manager Bill saw something in him and brought him in, and he's just flourished at the company, and most of that credit goes to him. We try to find folks, the folks that work best on my team are those who come in, they're humble, they are just excited about employee communications, they get what it is. They're passionate about engaging and communicating with employees. They're self-starters, they're creative, and especially in Zane's case, he's not afraid to say, that's a terrible idea, Joe, or push back on ideas. And I ask my team a lot for feedback on direction or ideas that we have. We do a lot of virtual brainstorming and things like that. And so he's never been shy to, share what he thinks about an idea. And he's also just super creative, as are many of the folks on my team, just driving content ideas, coming up with new ways of doing things. And he gets out and engages with the people he's communicating with. That's the other thing that we strongly encourage. You have to be good with people and get out and not be afraid to go spend a day at a power plant where you might have nothing in common with the folks that work there, but you make a connection and tell their stories. So it's kind of a combination of those things. And with Zane, he was a tremendous and is a tremendous self-starter and takes the initiative. He's picked up significant skills along the way. He's great at video now, photography, a great writer, and a lot of those skills he developed in just a short period of time he's been at the company. So I don't know what else I can say about the guy, but those are the kind of people that, if you put your head down, you're humble, you work hard, and you are a self-starter, you're successful on my team anyway.
Well, I love that, again, those in the audience who are hungry, they're growing their career, they can kind of hear it from your perspective. And in the spirit of taking risk, I am going to go off script a little bit and actually call on Zane. I did, to be fair, give him a heads up that I might do this just so we can hear from his perspective, so that for the senior leaders in our group, of what about your team and your leadership style, Joe, has made him flourish on the team. So Zane, I'm going to call on you now and ask you to join our conversation. And if you would unmute yourself, and can you talk a little bit about, the culture there at your company, and what about Joe and his leadership has made you rise up to be, the professional rock star in the company that you are?
Yeah, I had kind of hoped you might have forgot about this part because I was interested in hearing more from Joe. Um,
Hey, wait. Don't we get to see Zane? I can't.
I don't think you could see me. Sorry.
When we do breakout meetings, which is coming in our next series, we will be able to do that. But for
Oh,
now,
okay.
he can still
Sorry.
be chowing down on his lunch and talk to us.
Yes, just to keep it pretty brief. So to all of Joe's points, him and his leadership team have always been very open to new ideas, very willing to give me and my teammates the time and space to go learn new things, to get away from the desk, like he said, to have that time to go and meet and with the people that we're serving. And I think that more than anything makes a big difference in kind of finding that passion for employee communications, because I think once you have that, it's kind of weird when you get really excited about employee communications, that it's something you can find a lot of purpose and passion in. And Joe's just been really great about helping kind of open doors to that, and he's always had get that open door policy that you could come to him at any time with anything. He's always very responsive. Just really knows what he's doing. He's mentioned he's got 27 years of experience, and it shows. He's sharp. He's a great communicator, but also just a really good guy that's just really supportive and helpful. So it's just kind of sets a tone on our entire team of pushing to be as good as we can possibly be, and but also just really good people that are great to work with.
Let's keep you both on here. You both can jump in on this question. So talk about any tips or where your team is heading with now the next phase of this whole COVID new normal. Where are you with that, and any tips that you can offer in insight to our listeners today, because I'm sure that's what is really top of mind. I'm assuming with everyone.
Sure, I can start. Zane, jump in. We have seen a slowdown in the volume of information we needed to share around COVID, and for my team at least, we're resuming somewhat normal operations. We still do a weekly update on COVID. We used to do daily. And I mentioned I'm on this task force, for lack of a better word, to figure out what reintegration into the workplace for those who have been working remotely since mid-March looks like. We have some time because we've pushed that to August, and that will potentially get extended. So we got resuming normal operations. We were doing a newsletter every couple days or twice a week, and we put that off to the side during the COVID experience, and now we're bringing that back and trying to just resume regular communications, while at the same time planning for the next phase of what reintegration looks like, those protocols and those changes that people will see when they come back to work. We're not going to come back the way we did, just like most companies out there. It's not going to look anything like it did. So this is going to be a significant task to figure out what that looks like, and then how do we communicate that. A lot of change management will be involved in this piece as well.
Zane, do you have anything you want to add? Any new ideas you're coming up with, and of any opportunities this presents to test maybe some new things that you've been thinking about? Or
I think one of the best things to come out of this whole experience for us has been a lot of our early response included our senior leaders recording videos to employees, just very short selfie style 1 to 2 minute updates. They're in their home office or they're in their backyard. It was, I think you saw a lot of that in employee communications across the industry of, leaders kind of doing that authentic approach to communicating. And I would really love to see more of that, and hope to kind of help facilitate that concept of our senior leaders just being a little more open to just short videos. I mean, 1 minute, 90 seconds of their experience, what they're doing. And you can see how employees just really appreciate that little glimpse into their lives, and also that update simply of, here's, when the CEO takes a minute and says, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, this is what I'm working on, that's just a really great update that a lot of employees appreciate. So I'm hoping we can keep that going.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We did get a question before the show, and I'm going tactical here, so warning to everybody with videos. And since we're hearing a lot about this, how great that people can self-record with their phone themselves on a video. Is there any tips that you give leadership about how to properly do this so that they get the right angle? Is there a checklist like, hey, so that you don't look this way, like how do I hold the phone? Do you do this and help leadership so that they look the best they can, even in a home, recorded video?
We absolutely try to. Yeah, I know we've developed kind of some formal checklists. One sheet, here's some guidance on how to use your phone. Hold it, horizontally instead of vertically, and give yourself a little bit of an angle kind of above your eye line. It's just a little more flattering. So yeah, we definitely give them that direction, and hope. Sometimes it's a lot of direction, and they're just mainly thinking about what's their message. So sometimes it takes a little bit of coaching and just a few kind of practice runs before you can start to see them really kind of get the hang of it and get a little more comfortable, but it comes pretty fast.
Okay. Well, any checklist that you already have, don't make one for us, but if you have that, I am the checklist queen. I always steal everything I can for our group and be like, here's Zane's list, give it to your leadership. So
yeah, we can share something.
That would be awesome. Well, I am going to, wrap up this part. I know we've got about 5 more minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, we're going to keep Joe and Zane here for a hot minute. I'm going to switch gears and call on another one of our listeners who's actually going to be on our show, our final Bloom show on June 22nd. So we're going to keep Joe and Zane. If you are thinking of questions in your mind, put them in the chat and we'll go ahead and get them answered in this moment. And even if you think of something after the show, email me. I always respond and try to get the right resource to the right person. But I'm going to call now on Rachel, who is from Paycor. If you remember the big debacle 2 weeks ago where I was all excited about breakout rooms and I'm like, what's happening? And then she's like, hey man, I know Zoom. I'm going to show you how to get all this done. So she and I hopped on a call last week, and she was giving me the what's what with Zoom webinar versus Zoom meeting. And we just had an honest conversation about what's your take on this series, and should we be doing breakout rooms? And she had experience in something that she's done with her employees where they do the webinar format and then they jump into a meeting format. And Rachel, I just didn't know if you would want to share kind of what your idea was about maybe doing some specific breakouts based on a need that you had with comms planning. If you wouldn't mind sharing that a little bit, because that'll give our listeners kind of insight into what we're thinking for the next series. Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, sure. So Sarah and I were just talking, and I was making the ask of, I know there's a lot of great resources out there on communication plans, but just how do you do it and how do you do it well? I've seen a lot of different ones. We've had a lot of different ones. And so that was kind of my ask to her. And so she sent me some great resources on ICPro, and we've taken a look at those and just kind of helping go through that, instead of just having the resource and stopping there, if there was like any mentors out there that would be willing to walk us through it and things of that nature.
Yeah. So if anybody has any comms planning or a comms plan that's awesome, she's in a situation where she's like, I got to get this done by July 1. I'm sort of, new in this leadership role of my company, and I want to get this done. And I don't have all the answers either. I do have my own plan that I use, but again, anyone in the audience that has that is also led to our idea. And again, would love any feedback after the show. Email me. What we're thinking about doing is next week, Rachel's going to be our guest. She's actually going to give tips on things she has done to engage her employees virtually, some things that have really worked. And then we're going to also see if we can't get a comms plan expert to walk us through. So she's going to give, and then we're going to give to her in that moment. And the next series, which will probably be sometime in August, where we'll kick this off, maybe individualized kind of peer groups that you can pick from. So we'd love to know what section that you specifically would want to be paired in, and we would actually have just a 4 or 5 people in that peer circle that would work through a specific issue that you're having. So I've learned in doing this now for a few years that everyone is in a different spot. I mean, I think we've got Calvin from ATB on the call. His team is so innovative and way here. So I can already tell you, Calvin's going to want to know the latest, best, yes, innovation. What can we do? And there's other folks. Natalie Guzman's in our audience. She's the same way. They would be 2 peas in a pod, gonna like blow things up together. I can feel it. And then there's others that don't come from internal comms. They're just getting started and they need more practical, I need a comms plan. How do I do this? And so we want it to be personalized to what people need and to really provide value and get you to down the road, to the next step. So that's our intention. And I'll be reaching out to a lot of you who have attended this personally. So heads up that I really want to know as we go into our summer planning months, what we can come out with in August that's of real value to you, professionally. So did we get any questions, Gina? Are we good to go?
I think we're good to go, but there's a lot of praise for Joe and Zane going on in the chat right now.
Yay! Well, we're glad you're part of our tribe and our community. And Zane, I'm so glad that you spoke up and had us cross paths with your fearless leader there. And we love crossing paths with, rock stars in the community who are doing really cool things. And we look forward to diving deeper. And again, coming up with how our ICPro collective can truly help people in the audience from point A to point B. So any last minute thoughts from anybody? We good? I want to honor the time.
Hey, just happy to help anyone that needs any encouragement, guidance. Feel free to share my contact information, and I'd love to learn from others as well. So thanks for having us.
All right, awesome. Zane, I'm going to be tagging you for that self-recording video checklist because I got a couple people who are like, I want that. My leaders, I need to send that to them. So, and we'll send everything also in a follow-up email with extra resources, and we'll look forward to talking to Rachel in a couple weeks.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.